Somewhere in America, before the sun rises, a Ford F-150 is already doing what millions of them have done for decades. Headlights cutting through the dark, engine running before the coffee's even made. Somewhere else, another one is crossing a frozen field. Another is towing a family's entire summer down a highway. Another is parked outside a hospital, keys in a mechanic's hand, waiting to become someone's first truck. None of these people know each other. They live in different states, work different jobs, vote different ways. And yet they all made the exact same decision. Why? Why did one truck become unstoppable? Why do millions of Americans keep buying the same truck, generation after generation, when there are cheaper options, flashier options, options with bigger screens and louder engines? What secret let the Ford F-150 defeat every competitor that ever came for its throne? Stick with me, because the answer isn't what you think. And it starts in a moment when America wasn't looking for a truck at all. It was looking for a way to rebuild itself. America was rebuilding itself after the war. Factories that once produced weapons were searching for a new purpose. Families were searching for opportunity. And Ford believed the future wouldn't be built in factories alone. It would be built by people who needed a machine they could depend on. So in January 1948, Ford didn't just release a new truck. They released an idea. The F-Series arrived as an entire lineup, from light-duty to heavy-duty, built around a driver who was going to be behind the wheel all day, every day, in mud, in heat, in the middle of building something. Competitors were still treating trucks like modified cars, with a bed bolted on. Ford treated them like tools. But Ford had no idea this small decision would change everything. First, though, came a revolution nobody saw coming. In 1965, Ford introduced the twin I-beam suspension. It sounds like a footnote. It wasn't. Before this, trucks rode like farm equipment, stiff, jarring, built for hauling, and nothing else. Twin I-beam changed that overnight, giving the truck a smoother, more controlled ride than anything else on the market. For the first time, a truck could work all day and comfortably drive a family to church on Sunday. This is where the F-150 became more than a truck. It became a machine you could actually live your life around. Then came the decision nobody expected. In 1975, new emissions regulations were about to hit trucks over a certain weight rating, so Ford squeezed a new model into the gap between two existing ones, bigger than the F-100, lighter than the F-250. They called it the F-150. Nobody at Ford thought they were building a legend. They thought they were solving a regulatory headache, but history was about to change. What happened next nearly rewrote the entire industry. In 1977, just 2 years after being born, the F-150 helped push the F-Series to the top of the sales charts as America's best-selling truck for the very first time. It never came back down. As of the close of 2025, that streak has stretched to 49 consecutive years, a record nothing else in American automotive history has come close to matching. And then, in 1982, just 5 years later, Ford did something almost unbelievable. The F-Series became the best-selling vehicle of any kind in America. Not best-selling truck, best-selling vehicle, period. Ahead of every sedan, every coupe, every car Detroit and Japan could throw at it. A truck had just outsold every car in the country. Nobody saw that coming. And it's held that title, in one form or another, for decades since. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the world's greatest trucks. Because the next chapter would define the future of this truck for the next 40 years. Through the 1980s and 90s, Ford kept stacking advantages. Bigger V8 engines, more comfort, real safety features, at a time when trucks barely had any, and more trims than any competitor dared offer, which meant the F-150 wasn't just for contractors anymore. It was for young families teaching their kids to drive in an empty parking lot on a Sunday morning. It was for weekend adventurers. It was for anyone who needed one truck to live 3 different lives. But the biggest challenge was still waiting ahead. In the early 2000s, SUVs exploded in popularity, and plenty of people inside the industry assumed full-size trucks were about to become a dying niche. Ford could have chased the trend. Instead, they doubled down on capability and comfort at the exact moment everyone else was hedging their bets. It was a gamble that America's appetite for real trucks wasn't going away. It wasn't. It was just getting started. Then, in 2009, came a crisis nobody could engineer their way out of. The Great Recession brought the American auto industry to its knees. General Motors and Chrysler collapsed into bankruptcy, propped up by government bailouts. Ford refused one. Alone among Detroit's Big Three, they bet on themselves, and the newly redesigned F-150, launched that very year, helped carry the company through the worst economic collapse in generations. The F-150 didn't just survive the recession, it became a symbol of Ford's survival. The answer to everything was still hidden somewhere nobody was looking. And it started with a decision that made engineers across the industry question Ford's sanity. Ford was about to risk everything. In 2015, they ripped the steel body off the F-150 and replaced it with military-grade aluminum. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Aluminum on a truck? People pictured it denting like a soda can in a parking lot. But Ford wasn't just changing a truck. They were challenging the definition of what a truck could be. The result was lighter, more fuel-efficient, and just as strong, thanks to a high-strength steel frame underneath the new aluminum skin. It was one of the boldest engineering bets in truck history. It worked. Competitors are still catching up. And that is where the real story begins, because engineering alone was never going to be enough to explain what came next. From 2015 onward, the innovation never slowed. EcoBoost engines delivering V8-like power with far better fuel economy. PowerBoost hybrid models blending capability with efficiency. And then, in 2022, something that would have sounded like science fiction to the engineers who built the very first F-Series, a fully electric F-150, the Lightning. With Ford's intelligent backup power system and the right home equipment installed, an owner's Lightning can actually power their house during an outage, turning a truck parked in the driveway into a lifeline when the lights go out. That same year, Ford quietly passed a milestone few companies ever reach. The 40 millionth F-Series truck rolled off the line. By 2026, this isn't one truck anymore. It's an entire ecosystem: gas, hybrid, and electric, each one built for a different version of the American life. Now here's where most people get the story wrong. They assume the F-150 wins because it has the biggest engine, or the highest towing number, or the most expensive technology. It doesn't. Not always. The Chevrolet Silverado matches it on towing. The Ram 1500 matches it, and sometimes beats it, on interior comfort. Toyota's Tundra has built a reputation for being nearly indestructible. Ford's greatest achievement was never defeating weak competitors. It was surviving against some of the best trucks ever engineered, year after year, without ever losing its lead. That competition didn't weaken the F-150. It sharpened it. So if it isn't the numbers, what is it? Picture a contractor pulling out of his driveway at 5 in the morning, trusting that the truck waiting for him will start every single time. No excuses. Picture a farmer out before dawn, in the middle of a storm, hauling feed across frozen ground because the animals don't know it's raining. Picture a family packing up a camper in July, kids asleep in the back seat, towing an entire summer of memories behind them. Picture utility crews and first responders rolling into towns flattened by hurricanes and ice storms, because when the power's out and the roads are wrecked, this is the truck that shows up. Picture a father teaching his son to parallel park a truck in an empty church lot. And picture a grandfather, years later, handing over a set of keys, passing down not just a vehicle, but a decision his own father made decades earlier. That's not marketing. That's just Tuesday, all across this country, until you stop and count how many of those moments belong to this one truck. People don't buy trucks only with money. They buy them with trust. Ford built one of the largest dealer and service networks in America, making ownership easier for millions of buyers no matter how far they lived from a major city. Decades of aftermarket support mean there's a fix for almost anything that could go wrong. Resale value stayed strong year after year, and underneath all of it sat the one ingredient no competitor could manufacture overnight: trust. Built and rebuilt across generations of driveways. The F-150 didn't win because it was always the strongest truck on paper. It won because it became the truck people trusted with their work, their families, and their lives. Of course, the road was never smooth. Oil crises threatened to make big trucks obsolete overnight. The Great Recession crushed truck sales across the entire industry. Rising fuel prices and tightening emissions regulations forced Ford to reinvent its engineering more than once. And now, the biggest challenge yet, a new generation of electric competitors promising a completely different kind of truck for a completely different kind of future. But every single time, instead of retreating, Ford adapted without ever abandoning the identity that earned all that trust in the first place. So what comes next? More electric and hybrid models, expanding on what the Lightning started. AI-assisted driving features, learning a driver's habits in real time. Early autonomous capability being tested for the highway. Deeper connectivity, turning the truck into something closer to a command center. The next generation of F-150 won't just be a truck. It will be a rolling extension of everything a modern American life demands from it. Long after today's fastest cars disappear and today's newest technology becomes outdated, millions of Ford F-150s will still wake up before sunrise, carry heavy loads, cross open roads, and help people build their future. Because legends aren't created by numbers on a specification sheet. They're created by the people who depend on them every single day. That's why the Ford F-150 isn't just America's best-selling truck. It's part of America's story. If this deep dive into the F-150's rise kept you watching until the end, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next truck story. And down in the comments, tell us, which generation of the Ford F-150 is your favo, right?